Hey y'all, I know it always takes a second for this to kind of like catch up. So comment when you're ready. There we go. Okay. That's why I said it always takes a second for it, and it's always awkward. Hey y'all, my goodness gracious. It is so awkward waiting for that transition between like y'all coming on the live and me actually like being live. It's always great. How was everyone doing? I know that there's like quite a few live shows going on tonight. This actually was supposed to be last night, but your girl was tired, okay? I had 2 videos that I had to edit, and then what else did I have to do? 2 videos to edit in one night was enough. And I've been getting up early every day this week, trying to get up by like 5 o'clock in the morning. So it hasn't been super great to be up late. So I'm going to give a little bit more time just in case anybody else joins us. What's everybody reading? Can y'all see me? The way my screen is set up, I can't really see that well myself. So just want to make sure everyone can see and let me know what you're currently reading. I have a lot that I'm currently reading right now. Okay. I feel like I'm like super tiny on the screen though. I don't think I'm that tiny, but I feel like I'm super tiny. Because my Goodreads is taking up most of the screen. Nosferatu. I still have not read technically I've not read a Joe Hill book. I've read his Lock and Key series, which he did with Gabriel Rodriguez, the 6-volume comic book series. That was pretty good. Hold on. Okay, so someone said I was pretty small. Nope, that's not going to work. How is that? Is that better? Like, or is the Goodreads screen too small? Let me play with this a little bit more. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. Okay, so is that better than actually doing the... I'm sorry, I'm probably making some people like super dizzy right now. I think let's do it this way so you can actually see my face. Better. then yeah, okay, good, Ursula. I was like, I feel like I'm super, super tiny and I can't even see my own face, which is, kind of unfortunate. Okay, so we'll keep it like this. I haven't done a screen share by myself before, so this is pretty interesting. I've never done a wrap up live. There are a couple people who've done this before me. I know that Chloe from Thistle and Verse has done this before. I think the first time I saw it, I think she did it. And then I've seen Deidre from Shade Tree Read. She's also done this live before. And the reason why I decided to do it live this go round is because of the fact that I am doing Vlogmas right now. If you didn't know, I'm doing Vlogmas right now, and there's no way I was gonna do a November wrap up and Vlogmas and all that good. Like, it just wasn't gonna happen. But let's see. You're reading 400 Souls. That's a pretty intense book to be reading right now. A lot of people I see are reading Bitterroot. That's good because the live show is next week. We also have the live show for Saga volumes 5 and 6 is tomorrow night. Emperor of the Wild, Persepolis 2. I always forget that Persepolis originally came out as a volume 1 and a volume 2, or part 1 and part 2, because I'm so used to reading the complete Persepolis. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's been interesting making the content because it's just I'm busy, but you know, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning and kind of bulk filming has helped, and I think it's a routine that I may keep going into the new year. Okay, you're reading Bad Fat Black Girl. Just finished Wings of Ebony for the second time. I probably need to reread Wings of Ebony before it comes the what's it called? The second book drops in, does it drop in January? I think it drops in January. I can't remember whether it drops in January or not. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it drops in January. I need to reread it, but there's a lot of stuff that I need to get done before next year, and I just don't feel like it's gonna get done. So I may just kind of go ahead and I'm gonna say give up per se, but maybe give up a little bit. Let's see. Yeah. I bet it is hitting hard. Ibram X Kendi always does hard hitting things. It goes without fail that he does hard hitting things. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump in, because if I don't do this now, we'll be here all night, and I cannot be here all night because I'm tired. There we go. All right, so bear with me. Usually, this is how it usually happens. When I do my wrap-ups, y'all, I am a lot more organized. It's a lot of editing that goes on, so you can't really tell all the craziness that ensues whenever I do my wrap-ups. You know, my wrap-ups are notoriously known for being super long. A lot of them are easily like an hour long, and that's after editing. So we're gonna figure out how I can do this live. See if I can actually do this live. And everything that I've read in the month of November has not been given a written review. So this is just some of the stuff. We're going to have to go to my currently reading to kind of get everything. And this is my Goodreads. So I think the last thing that I talked about in the month of October was Baby Girl, better known as Aaliyah. I think that was the last thing I talked about. So the first thing that we're going to look at that I read in the month of November, which I think technically I actually read this book in October, but I couldn't remember. So I just kind of like said I read it in November, but I'm pretty damn sure I read it in October, but it doesn't really matter at the end of it. In the grand scheme of things, I haven't talked about it, so we're going to talk about it. I read Catch Me If You Can by Christina C. Jones. So if you did not know, I have been on a Christina C. Jones kick. And basically, I've been trying to make it through her backlist, but this woman is like impossible. It's impossible to make it through her backlist because she writes so much. She is a Black love romance writer, and I swear this woman puts out a new book every month. But I'm reading some of her older stuff. So this one is one that came out in 2014. Yeah, it's 2014. And it is kind of a suspense espionage, kind of like Black romance, which is interesting because Christina C. Jones writes across a variety of like subgenres. She doesn't only write like contemporary, she kind of delves into some darker stuff. Like she has darker romances. She's done kind of like a fantasy romance. I know she's done paranormal, and this is like her romantic suspense. And it is about two characters. And also, let me just go ahead and say this. I'm horrible with character names. If you ever pay attention to when I do wrap-ups, I rarely ever say the character names because I just I'm just not good at it. So this one is about Naomi and Marcus. And Naomi, in the beginning of the book, is kind of framed to be not a villain per se, but she's not exactly a good person. And you get the perspective of Marcus, who's an FBI agent, and they cross paths because he ends up trying to investigate her. And then he finds out, and I'm trying not to say too much because I also don't want to spoil it. Something happens between the two of them, and they end up working together on a case, and they have to fake date for this case in order to kind of solve it. And of course, fake dating typically leads to romance, and that's exactly what happens in this book. It was a really good read. I think that the only hiccup that I had kind of talked about in my review was that the ending was kind of confusing because it was trying to tie a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together, and I didn't feel like it was easy to keep up with when she was trying to connect some dots. But overall, I felt like it was a good romance. I think there was a good balance of romance and a good balance of like the kind of suspense and espionage aspect of it. So I think that this book is actually part of a trilogy, and I think the third one literally just dropped. Oh no, it didn't. It came out in 2015. I don't know why I thought maybe she just did an audio version of it or something. I don't know. But it's part of a trilogy, so hopefully I highly doubt I'm going to finish this, y'all, by the end of the year. But hopefully I do finish it next year, and I ended up giving that one 4 stars. Let's see what I read next. Okay. So I read The Sweetest Remedy by Jane Ikaro, which is really interesting because her first book, which was Ties That Tether, was a book that I really did. It was hard because I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to do it. I think in that book, I really enjoyed like the conversation about what it's like not to only date interracially, but what happens when you have two different cultures kind of like clash together and you try to make it work for the sake of your relationship. But there were some elements of that I won't spoil. I'm like huge on spoilers. There's one big thing, and it's a debate on whether it's a spoiler or not, but I'm not going to say it because it's not in the summary. There's a huge thing that kind of happens in the beginning of the book that just, I don't know, it didn't really necessarily sit 100% well with me and how it kind of moved the story along. And then our two main characters in that one, like, their romance didn't feel real. So I don't do well with romances where there's like not a good chemistry between the two main characters. So anyway, I was really hesitant about jumping into this one because I did not like her debut. However, The Sweetest Remedy actually ended up being really, really good. This one is about a woman by the name of Hannah. She's biracial, and she basically has lived with her mom for an extended period of time, well, for her entire life. She doesn't really know much about her dad, if anything at all. I don't think she really knows. If I'm remembering correctly, I don't think she knows anything about her father whatsoever. And she goes to Nigeria after he passes away to attend his funeral, and she finds out that she has all these siblings. And it's interesting because she is learning more about her family and she's learning more about her culture, but there's kind of some like tensions because the kids that her dad had in Nigeria, and they all don't necessarily live in Nigeria, but the family that he had in Nigeria, they are confused about her existence because he never told anybody that she existed, or a lot of people didn't know that she existed. I think it was one person in the family that knew that she existed. And it was really interesting because it was like, okay, we didn't know that she exists. This is supposed to be our sister, but honestly, like, we don't really know her that well. And so it's kind of them getting to know each other. And then there's a love interest that's a part of it as well. But I think what I liked about this book is it's crazy because it is technically a romance, but I wasn't as invested in the romance as I was in like the family dynamics. The family dynamics were really, really interesting. And what I like specifically about The Sweetest Remedy, which she didn't necessarily do in Ties That Tether, is that you get perspectives from each family member. So they are getting to know the main character, Hannah, and it's not just from Hannah's perspective, it's also from the siblings' perspective. And it makes it fun because you get to see kind of what the siblings are struggling with, how they're viewing Hannah, how they're coping with their father's death. And it's that kind of like family drama element. And there's this whole thing that happens like at the end of the book that really kind of pushes Hannah away from the family. And it's interesting how they kind of try to fix that out. And, you know, everybody, all the siblings are not super welcoming of her at first, naturally, because they're like, okay, who is this person? Why is she here? Why didn't our father tell us about her? Now we're forced to get to know her because it was something that was kind of situated with his will that they had to get to know each other. And it was pretty ingenious the way that he did it and how he set everything up. Mad respect for her father. And you learn more about her father and why things happened the way that they did. I really like the relationship between Hannah and her mother. They had a really, really strong bond, which was kind of tested during like the later part of the book. But I think that this book is probably stronger. Not probably. I feel like it's a lot stronger than the one that she did. Her freshman title is just, her first book just wasn't that great, but The Sweetest Remedy I did enjoy. And then, you know, there's also a lot of commentary about Hannah being biracial and not really knowing the Nigerian side of her heritage and the traditions and stuff like that, and visiting Nigeria for the first time and learning more about, you know, her own culture. She just wasn't exposed to it because she was living with her mom, so she didn't know anything about it, from like tasting, you know, foods to experience different aspects of the culture. I thought it was well written. So I think that, if I'm not mistaken, she has a third one that kind of, I don't they don't follow each other, but she does a lot of, it seems like her books are always going to be about, you know, that cross cultural kind of thing going on, like she did in Ties That Tether. um I think she's going to continue kind of that theme in all of her books. So she has another one coming out called Worth Having. And I'm very surprised that The Sweetest Remedy actually has a lower rating than Ties That Tether. Ties That Tether has a 3.8, but granted, there's like a good 6,000 more reviews on that one than there is The Sweetest Remedy. So that makes sense. All right, so following that up, I actually have a physical copy of this one. Hey, y'all. Hey, Shay. I know this is like really a lot of me talking, but like if y'all do want to jump in at any point and like say anything, you're more than welcome to do so. All right. So the next one that I ended up reading was a middle grade graphic novel, and it was this one, which is a Seance Tea Party. And I had my eyes on this one. This one came out, I believe, last year, because I feel like I talked about this in like a anticipated reads list, and I ended up not getting into it. Yeah, it did come out in 2020. I wanted to read it. I was trying to get to it, and I didn't get the chance to get to it last year. And then I put it on hold at the library, and I was like, oh, okay. I will check this out now. So basically, Seance Tea Party, like I said, it's a middle grade graphic novel, and it focuses on this young girl who ends up, she's having what I like to call like friendship issues. So I love when middle grade books in general kind of cover that transitioning between how friendships really work. I think that when you're in elementary school, friendships are kind of like a different ball game, and when you get to middle school, people start, you know, figuring out a little bit more about themselves. Dynamics change. I think middle grade like age, you know, time is really, really difficult. At least for me, it was. the Being in like, you know, when I think about like sixth grade to eighth grade, that was like a really, really tough time because you don't know whether you want to be a kid, whether you want to be a teenager. I love when they cover those changing dynamics of of friendships. Yeah, it does get catty. You're right, Shamla. It gets super catty in middle school. Well, our main character in this one is also like, she's struggling a lot with maintaining her friendships. They're kind of going in different directions, and she wants to kind of keep up like the same games and stuff that they did when they were younger. And so she feels like everyone is growing up without her, and she's struggling with that a whole lot. And she ends up summoning this spirit who used to be sort of like her imaginary friend. And the spirit is there to keep her company and to help her navigate making new friends. but it's so sad. I haven't read a middle grade graphic novel that was as sad as this one, because as the main character is figuring out what she wants to do in terms of like her identity and her friendships, the ghost is also trying to figure out who she was and whether she wants to move on and let go. Like, you know, they say that a lot of times, or some people say that when ghosts are present and um when they remain behind, it's because they have unfinished business. So it's kind of that same thing that happens in here, where the ghost has quote unquote unfinished business, and she's trying to figure out whether she wants to fix that. And you find out what happened to her when she was younger and why she passed away and why she remains the age that she did. And you know, it was a couple of panels in the back, I was like, oh, this is so depressing. It's cute, and it has such a meaningful ending to it, but it's sad. It's so sad. But this is great, I think, for like October reads. It's not particularly spooky. It's definitely more coming of age, but I don't know if y'all could see this, but that's some of the artwork that's in it. So not a lot of text on the page, but it was great. I love this. I think this is one that I will reread because it was just that good. But if you haven't read the Seance Tea Party, I definitely recommend checking this one out. If I'm not mistaken, I think I'm like 90% sure I gave that one 5 stars. No, I only gave it 4. I'm surprised. Y'all, I be thinking I rate stuff 5 stars, and then I I rating it like 3.5. It was a 3.5, 4 stars. I loved it, but it was like 3.5, 4 stars. Okay. So I did end up rating that one 4 stars. And I'm getting cotton mouth. I hate getting cotton mouth. I'm cotton mouth. Imagine what this is like, trying to do this in a way where my talking is concise, but also like trying to be as in depth as possible, and then going back and editing all this crap. I gotta change it up. Y'all need to let me know in the comments below. Would you rather see the full feature length films, or would you prefer that I start doing weekly wrap ups? Because honestly, the editing that goes into the editing that has to go into a wrap up, y'all, is complete. It's not chaos, but it's, oh geez, man. Like, editing a wrap up is crazy. Yeah. Yeah, Gavin, I never really truly remember like what I rate things until I go back and I look at my Goodreads. So y'all let me know as I try to like moisturize my throat with saliva. It's disgusting. Can you tell that I'm tired? Let's see. Do your full features, in my opinion, easier for my journal to have it all in one personally. Okay. So this is how you keep track of, like, this is your list of things to read. Now I get a drink. I don't, you know, it'll be a whole thing for me to get a drink right now, to be honest with you. Off topic, I promise I'm going to get back on topic. I have low iron, so I'm anemic, and so I don't know if it's called pica or pica. I can't remember which one it is. What, like, the pronunciation of it. I eat ice. I crave ice. So it's when you crave non-nutritional things, and I crave ice. So literally me getting a drink of water now, I have to buy the bags of ice from Sonic. If you don't know what Sonic is, it's like this, it's a fast food joint. I don't know where they are. Like, I know they're in the South. I don't know where else they may be in the United States. I don't even know if they exist outside the United States. But they sell those big bags of ice, and I buy them. I'm not ashamed to say that I buy them. It's not expensive either. I think they're like $3, $4 for like a 5-pound bag of ice. But I sit there and I get a cup of ice and I crunch and crunch and crunch and eat. And my dentist is like, I'm going to pop you in your face if you continue to tear up your enamel. So, and I continue to tear up my enamel because what can I say? All right, so pretty much everybody's saying that they like the full length feature films because it's all in one. Y'all are going to, yeah. Yeah. I'm going to ruin my teeth. Yeah. My teeth are like, you can see like where my enamel, like I've taken the enamel off my teeth and whatever. You only live once. Gonna die anyway. That's a very grim outlook. I had a coworker say that to me today and I thought it was hilarious, but everyone may not take that to be funny. So please pick the long wrap ups. I really like them. Okay. Okay. We'll keep the long wrap ups because that seems to be the thing that everybody enjoys. Okay. So the next thing that I ended up reading, and after I talk about this one, I am going to stop and I am going to get a cup of ice because we're going to be here for a little minute. The next one that I read a lot of, I've been reading a lot of traditionally published romance. I don't know why. I think it's just the audiobooks are available at the library on Libby, and I just was like, oh, the cover. It's like cover. I get a high. I don't know if y'all get this from like being able to go on like Libby or whatever or Hoopla or in your library and put stuff on hold, and it kind of gets rid of that itch to buy books. So I do that with Libby. It's out of control. And my daughter has her own library card, so I may or may not use her card to get additional stuff. It's awful, y'all. I don't regret it, but it's awful like how addicting it is. What am I doing to myself? What? What, Shamla? You know you don't like it. Like what? Tell me. Um oh, the traditionally published romance. I sometimes I have a, if that's what you're talking about, sometimes I do have a traditionally like published romance that'll hit and it's not bad, it's pretty decent. But then other times, most of the times I read, yeah, most of the times I read traditionally published romance and I'm like, it really doesn't hit for me. So I ended up reading the Shottie Setup and I'm pretty sure I gave this one 3.5 stars, even though I think I only rated it. Yeah. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. And it's high school sweethearts, Rita and Milan. And they literally were dating up until college. Something happens. He hurts her. And then they end up not speaking for 6 years. And it is really, I think some of the premises of this book were really interesting because Rita ends up dating this other guy, but in some ways she doesn't really want to she don't want to take the relationship seriously. But in order to get I think his name is Neil, if I'm not mistaken. Let's check Goodreads. Yeah, his name is Neil. And it's interesting that this says like almost perfect boyfriend because I didn't get that vibe from Neil when I started reading it. I didn't like Neil as a character. But her and Neil are supposed to be doing this casual dating thing, but his mother is like very controlling of his life. And he also doesn't mind it. Like she has his hands in everything. And she wants him to be on this dating website, which the dating website is My Shottie. And that's why the book itself is called The Shottie Setup. And the only way that his mother would appear to approve a relationship is through this website. And they end up trying to force themselves to match on this website. But what ends up happening is Rita ends up matching with her ex, Milan. So she can't figure out like why that happens. And they end up having to deal with each other because he's a realtor and he does realty, home renovations, whatever. She does home renovations. They end up working together on a project, which was a part of it that I really, really liked because I had not ever seen, whether it's traditional or like an indie romance where there was kind of a HD TV type of feel to it, which I did like. I did like the home renovation part of it. And it was clear that the two characters were super passionate about home renovations. And you really got to see their skill set shine when they were doing the home renovations. The thing about it is, and what I realize is that a lot of traditionally romance books that I pick up, and it's not intentional, and I can't ever really tell sometimes, is they have the miscommunication trope. And if you know anything about my romance reading habits, the miscommunication trope is one of my least favorite tropes in romance, because I, over the years, I'm not perfect at it. My partner will tell you that I'm not perfect at it. Um, I have gotten really, really big on communication and learning how to effectively express myself, or at least try to effectively express myself. So, personally, for me, miscommunication is like this could have been solved if someone would have just said this or said that. And I know in real life situations, it's not always that easy, but the miscommunication trope was super evident in this. And it really pissed me off. And I was like, this is stupid. The reason why they end up breaking up is dumb. It's so dumb. It is super dumb why they end up breaking up. And I'm like, really, y'all? Like, this could have been figured out with a simple text message or a simple phone call asking why. And no one did that. So that bothered me. And then, really honestly, having Neil in this book was unnecessary. So it created this love triangle, really, that just had no purpose. And in my opinion, I think I may have said this in the review that I did. I felt like there was some slight emotional, I don't want to say cheating because that may be a stretch, but it felt like she was doing some things that were not necessarily appropriate considering the context of the relationship that she had with Neil. I don't know. I mean, it can be kind of seen like both ways because, Neil was going out with other women from myshottie.com. But see, Rita gave the okay for that. So I was kind of like, I don't know. It was just kind of sticky. What I did like about it is that I like the cultural explorations. I am a huge, if you have not noticed, like I love books that explore different cultures, especially ones that are extremely different from my own. So hearing things about like arranged marriages and like familial expectations and having like huge family involvement in dating, which is completely opposite from like how I grew up, my culture. It's not super like family and it's like, oh, I'm dating somebody, if I feel like they're worth it, I'll bring them home type of situation. But kind of seeing something different in this book is something that really stood out, and I liked it, but it was just so many things that I didn't, and I'm surprised that I ended up giving it 3.5, to be honest with you, because I really could rate this at 3 stars and be fine with it being at 3 stars because of the fact that the miscommunication trope was strong. I feel like Rita kind of did some tiny bit shady since she was technically still in a relationship. And then when you get to the point where Milan and Rita are trying to like reconcile and fix whatever happened with their relationship, like Milan just got stupid immature. And it was like, okay, you came off as this like really well put together type of guy, and then come time to reconcile the relationship and he couldn't really get it together. So this is my first book by this author, Lily Val, I believe. Yeah, I believe that they have other books. Yeah, they do have other books, which right here. And I believe that, I don't know if this is their first adult book. It might be their first adult romance. I don't know. I don't know much about the author, but this was like, this is why I don't really read traditional romance like that. And then I end up reading more traditional romance in the month of November. Stupid me. Of course I did. All right. So I also ended up reading Saga volumes, and I haven't reviewed this yet. So you're not going to see, this is what I'm talking about. My Goodreads never matches what I'm actually doing in real life because sometimes I just don't have time to update it and do it the way that I need to do it. But I have not read I have not updated my Goodreads to match the fact that I read Saga Volume 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I read 4 volumes of that this month. We did 2 live shows. Not this month, November. Damn it, vlogmas. It's got my brain all screwed up. Work, vlogmas, taking care of a child. I can't keep my mind straight. Yeah. But I did end up reading 4 volumes of Saga. You won't see 3 and 4. I'm not going to talk about these because we've done a live show for all 4 volumes. Like I said, tonight and tomorrow, I'm going to be reading volumes 5 and 6 to prep for the live show that's going to be happening tomorrow. So if you don't know what Saga is a sci-fi fantasy comic book series that started releasing in about 2012. It focuses on 2 main characters who are from 2 planets that are, it's Wreath and Landfall, and it's actually a planet and its moon. They're at war with each other. And one interesting thing that we've all agreed upon in rereading Saga is that Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples really do some interesting things in regard to their commentary on like war and how war impacts those who may not even be involved. And you really get to see those effects. It definitely has kind of like a star-crossed lovers vibe to it because these 2 are not supposed to be together, clearly because their respective places are at battle and they end up having a child, and this entire series is written from the perspective of the child, which has led us to some conclusions that this is not going to be a very happy series, but I think pretty much everyone knows that. I'm still trying to debate how I'm going to rate 3 and 4. But I think, let's see what I gave volume 1. I don't even think I wrote a review for volume 2, to be honest with you. Okay, so first of all, I've read this a couple of times. I read it 3 times. I've read volume 1 3 times, and I still left it at a 4-star read. 4-star. Yeah, it is a 4-star read. And then volume 2, I'm like 99% sure I didn't write a review for this one. I think I just rated it. Yeah, I just rated it. Read this one 2 times now. Yeah. I rated that one 4 stars as well. So trying to debate on what I'm going to rate 3 and 4. I'm definitely debating whether I even want to write reviews for it because we've been doing the live show. So we'll see what happens there. All right. So the next thing that I ended up reading, I read a lot of picture books this month. I made a decision this year to start tracking. If I have to see Diary of a Wimpy Kid again, I'm going to scream. So I definitely have made the decision now to start reading more, not reading more, but tracking more, because I read picture books, but I don't track them as much as I should, you know? Because people always have these feelings about picture books, and I should start saying, like, I just don't care how y'all feel about picture books and me counting them and whatever. So this is a nonfiction picture book. I want to show y'all the artwork in this. So hold on, I'm going to turn my screen off really quick so I can get the copy of it, which I think is right here. I want y'all to see all my goods hanging out. You know, put that on the internet. All right, let's see here. All right, so this is the book. It is a nonfiction picture book, and it is about how Black people need to start reclaiming the legacy that was left from slavery. So not looking at slavery through, I mean, of course, we all know slavery, horrible, 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 horrible thing. I don't think I would have made it. But looking at some of the traits, I don't want to say traits, but the legacy that's been passed down from slavery. So certain qualities. So this book really focuses on, what it does is it highlights different things. So like love, which is a legacy. Intellect is a legacy that has come from slavery. Courage, is something, you know, a legacy that's been passed on from slavery. Determination. And this book is really, really pretty. It has some information just about different people. Like this one goes into different inventors. So it starts with a legacy that starts with slavery, but it also goes into different periods of time in Black history. And I thought the artwork, like this whole thing right here, as a matter of fact, hold on. Let me, nope, not that. That's not it. Okay, yeah, because I want you to see. So this is the artwork that's in it. And the artwork is absolutely beautiful. Like, look at this. This is why I love picture books. Probably the artistic element that goes into a lot of these picture books is simply gorgeous. Like that. That's beautiful. So this is one that I had been wanting to read, and I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. It's great if you are looking to get into more children's nonfiction. This is definitely a title that I would recommend checking out. And let's go back to this other screen. Okay, so unpopular opinion. I okay. So the week that I ended up being in the hospital for bacterial bronchitis and going to Y'all Fest, I ended up listening to So Many Beginnings by Bethany C. Morrow. And this is part of the remix classics that are coming out. So it's YA. If you didn't know, or if you've never heard of the remix classics, so the first one is actually by C.B. Lee. They did Treasure Island. Then there's one coming out next year. That's Robin Hood. Then Wuthering Heights. There's a Great Gatsby one slated. Romeo and Juliet. So you can see. And then there's Kaylin Barron is doing a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde remix. So it's a whole series of books that they're doing. And I just ended up starting with Bethany C. Morrow's book because I think I had the Treasure Island one, and my my checkout expired on this one. So I didn't end up reading it when I thought I was going to read it, so I ended up starting with So Many Beginnings. So I did have the honor of hearing Bethany C. Morrow talk a little bit about this remix and how it is not a retelling, it is a remix, meaning that what you're not going to get is Black faces on the white characters that you would have seen in Little Women. That was not her intention. Her plan was to showcase um, a different part of American history. And what I did like about this book so much is that it wasn't a direct retelling. I think that's what I appreciated about it. And you can read this book without having read Little Women. It still focuses on 4 sisters, but it's different because it's looking at their relationship during and after the Civil War. And she really goes into some interesting topics, especially about the Black experience that's not taught. I think that here in America, the North is often painted as being good when you're talking about the Civil War. The North is good, the South is bad. And unfortunately, what I don't like, and what a lot of people don't like about that, is that it makes it very black and white. And it's not black and white like that. I'd tell you that right now. The North had issues as well, just as well as the South. A lot of people frame it as the South was very open about their racism, and the North was more discreet. They were underhanded in their racism. And she does really dive into that. And I appreciated that because as a history major, I know that, I got my bachelor's in history. That's not a part of history that's often taught, and it's not taught correctly. And it really shows how revisionist history is at play. My issue with this, I think that Bethany C. Morrow always goes into her books making some sort of social commentary. That is just her, I think, as a writer. I think that's her by nature. That's who she is as a person. Bethany and I, not because y'all see Bethany, Beautifully Bookish Bethany, not that Bethany, the author Bethany. I read A Song Below Water last year, and I had the same feelings about this book that I had about that one. Her ability to highlight different historical things, highlight social constructs, like A Song Below Water really, really delves into the whole idea of misogynoir, which, if you've never heard that term before, it's the intersection of discrimination in being a woman, which is misogyny, and the noir is added to emphasize discrimination that Black women face. Thought it was really, really well done. What I realized, which I didn't realize in A Song Below Water, because I couldn't pick up like why I didn't. It was like some technical stuff, like her not fully explaining the mythology in that book, and it was kind of more like a contemporary fantasy feel to it, but I couldn't really pinpoint 100% like what it was about that book that really just didn't sit well with me. And then I read this one and I was like, I'm getting that same feeling. It is her writing style. And it took me a second to pick up on it because I think I like what she is attempting to do technically with her books, like in terms of the message that she's sending, but her writing style is very distinct to me. She has a very, very distinct writing style. And I think that no matter how much I appreciate what she's always going to attempt to do with her novels, our writing style, like her writing style and me as a reader, like I just don't think that we're ever going to agree. So there were sections of this book for me that felt extremely dry, and the writing just came off like kind of like clunky. It was interesting. Like I just did not enjoy it as much as I thought. And there were sections I was like, oh my gosh, this is so dry. Like it's really, really dry. I was like, I'm not enjoying this as much as as much as I thought I was going to enjoy it. And I wish that it could have been longer, but I know that that probably wasn't a possibility because I wanted to know more about the sisters. And she does some great things with them in terms of like their character development, characterization. They really, she does well with them. There is possibly, it's not explicitly stated on page that one of the sisters is Ace, but if you read between the lines and certain things that she's saying about her inability to she says love the same way as others. If you read it in the context of the story, like it can be assumed that she does have a character that is Ace in this book, which I think was extremely interesting, and she did it very, very well without having to make it kind of the center of that character. Like that's not what it was all about. But when the sisters were exploring their romantic relationships, that was something that that specific sister did bring up. And the reason why I said I wanted it to be longer is because, it covers a big chunk of time, and I wanted to know more because she had to do it so quickly, because I think the book can't be more than like 350, if that. How long is this book? It's only 304. Okay, so I gave it even a little bit more. I think for me, it was just one of those things where I was like, dang, I wish this book was just like a tad bit longer, because it would have given me even more character development. And I think that I would have ended up probably giving it a little bit of a higher rating if I would have gotten that. But I understand not. It's not that I'm not going to ever read a Bethany C. Morrow book. because I have plans to read the follow-up to A Song Below Water, but I just know that her writing style and me as a reader, it just may never happen. So I only give that one 3.5 stars, which 3.5 stars is an average rating. It's not a bad rating. I read another picture book, which this one was sent to me for review by the publisher, which was, I think, Random House sent me this. And this is written by DMC, with Daryl DMC McDaniels, part of Run DMC. And it literally, I think, is kind of his, like, it's not autobiographical, but I think it just uses him as probably some experiences he may have had. But it does focus on a young boy who likes to write poetry, and when he signs up to do the talent show, the other kids are like, oh no, like, nobody wants to hear your poetry or whatever. And then he wants to he struggles with what he wants to be, and really honing in on that passion of poetry, and dealing with the school bullies, and finally saying, like, I'm just going to do it anyway. And so I think it's a really good book to teach kids about their confidence and how to handle dealing with bullies and stuff like that. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I'm a little bit more flexible in my ratings of children's materials because, as I said in the video that I did about like adult rating, middle grade and children's too harshly, like, I'm not the target audience. So I am just a tiny bit more flexible. Holy crap. Did I read Peril in November? I don't remember reading that in November. Apparently I did. Y'all, this is so fucking... I can't believe I actually sit down and record this stuff. Ugh. I don't know how I do this, y'all. Okay. So I can't really tell y'all about this one, unfortunately, because this is the second book in the series. This is A Good Girl, Bad Blood. I want to say, if y'all listen to Rihanna, every time I look at this title, I want to say A Good Girl Gone Bad, because that's how my brain sees it because of Rihanna's. I think one of her albums was actually titled Good Girl Gone Bad. Or maybe it was just a song. I can't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. But every time I see this title, I see A Good Girl Gone Bad. And that's not the title. It's Good Girl, Bad Blood. This is the second book in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I am very particular about YA thriller and mysteries. I do not often pick up a lot of them. My go-to is typically Karen McManus. And Karen McManus, I literally have read everything that she's written. She just came out literally this past week, I think, or it was last week. She literally just dropped her book. I think it's called You'll Be the Death of Me. She literally just dropped it, and I just finished that shit this week. So that's how much I read Karen McManus. Like, I read everything that she puts out because she is a well-known YA thriller mystery writer. Tiffany D. Jackson is well-known YA thriller mystery writer. So I was super hesitant when I went to go pick up A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is the first book in the series. I was like, you know what? I think that this could be a hit or miss. And it's so good. If you have not read this series yet, y'all, yeah, Gavin, really, every time you see the book, I'm telling you, you're going to see Good Girl Gone Bad. Really, because every time I look at that, I'm like, geez, this is not a Rihanna album. This is a book. But it's really good. And anytime like I talk about this series, I always tell people, or I rec it to say, like, you need to listen to this on audio if you can. If you have access to the audiobook, I highly, highly, highly recommend listening to it on audio, because it's like it's like a podcast. It's like listening to a true crime podcast. I gave the first book 5 stars. I gave this one 5 stars. This one literally picks up where the second one left off. But the twist in this book, because as I was reading it, I was like, you know what? I think that this is probably going to be a solid like 4-star read. It's really good. But I was like, I don't know if it's going to be as strong as the first one. Y'all, when I got to the end of this book and the reveals about what the freak happened, I was like, you've got to be kidding, because it came out of left field. I never would have seen it coming. And that's, for me, is a mark of a good thriller or a mystery, is when reveals happen. I had no idea, because I'm the type of person that will read a thriller or a mystery book and like start guessing and try to put the pieces of the puzzle together myself. And which, you know, sometimes I spoil myself for stuff if I just read it and stop thinking, but I can't help myself. This one, I didn't see it coming. So it definitely was a 5-star read for me. I am currently in line on my library's Libby waiting for the third book on audio, because I just think reading it physically just, it's not as good as reading or listening to it on audio. Y'all stop apologizing for being late. Listen, this is the middle of the week type of situation, okay? I don't ever expect people to be on time or like super duper present for like week lives, because listen, people gotta get up and go to work, or they have little ones or school, or they're like, you know what? I just feel like doing other stuff during the week. I did not get my ice chips yet, Salter. I haven't gotten it. Should I take a break, y'all, and go get? I'm going to stop the cam. I'm going to go get my ice chips, and I literally will be right back. Promise. Ice chips to the rescue. Okay. Ice chips. All right. Okay. So I did another traditionally published romance, and I shouldn't have. But I had been on hold for this one for a while. The holds list for this at the library was super long. So when it came in, I was like, all right, I read the Shottie Setup. I don't know if I should listen to this or not. And I was at work one day. I started listening to it, and I was like, screw it. We're just, I started it. I'm going to just go ahead and push through. It ended up being, I think I gave this one 3.5 as well. Yeah, 3.5. This is my firstie Jackie, my firstie. Do y'all hear the nonsense that I'm spewing tonight? Like, do y'all hear? Yeah, the nonsense that I'm spewing is, need to go to sleep. That's a problem. This is my first Jackie Lau book. And I had heard a couple of things about some of her other romance books, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to check this one out. So it literally is about a actor by the name of Ryan, and he's well known for his abs, literally, like his abs are famous, and a baker by the name of Lindsay. And he comes into, and she makes gourmet donuts, not donuts, gourmet donuts. And she's a baker. and that's how they kind of meet each other. And I don't think she really knows a lot about him, but he ends up taking baking lessons from her because he's participating in this celebrity competition. And I think it was a little on the insta lovey side, to be honest. Which, I mean, it's not super bad, but because I read indie and I read novellas, which are super insta lovey. But I think you have to write insta love in a way where the characters still feel like they have chemistry. And I don't know if I 100% bought into their romance. This was another type of book where I think I was more interested in some of the topics that she handles, more so than the romance. Like I just I didn't really care. It really was it was kind of like it really wasn't that serious. But one thing that I did like that she does with this is that she speaks a lot about what it's like to be Asian and in the entertainment industry. And she does it in a different lens, kind of because this book takes place in Canada and not in America. So even that adds a different layer. I think she handled, like, there was a lot of conversation about like grief, and because both of the characters deal with grief, but in different ways. And I think Ryan more so because it's really impacting his relationship with his father. Him and his father do not really have a good relationship at all, and you kind of see that play itself out. But so talking about like those familial relationships and how grief can break or make familial relationships, that commentary about what it's like to be Asian in the entertainment industry and what people deem as attractive and not attractive, which I can appreciate because I know that that gets talked about a lot in the like Black community and the roles that Black people have in the entertainment industry. But it was definitely nice to hear it from a different perspective. But these two characters, y'all, do not have chemistry whatsoever. It was hard to buy into their romance because like insta love is very, very hard to write in a way that's believable. Not saying that it can't happen or like it can't be well done. It's hard to do it. And I don't think that the execution was good in this one. Um I love any book that centers around food. Um and so that was kind of a plus for me. But once again, it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, traditionally published romance is definitely, it's a hit or miss for me. And I think just for me as a reader, I think that it's always going to be a hit or a miss for me. I think that's just the reality of the situation. So I ended up giving that one 3.5 stars. I'll probably, I'll check out some more of Jackie's books, but it wasn't anything that was mind blowing. So I read 2 other picture books. After that, I ended up reading Hey You, which is, as it says here, an empowering celebration of growing up Black. This one does not come out until February of next year, but I was able to read it. And I love that this one is about celebrating being Black and instilling that confidence in being Black at such a young age. Because I know that, there are quite, not every Black person has to go through it, but I know of quite a few Black people who have had to go through the process of what we call self-actualization, like being aware of your Blackness and being confident in your Blackness. And it took me some time to do that. And I think that this book is super empowering. This is probably one of my favorite picture books that I ended up reading this year. So clearly, because I gave this one 5 stars, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but I loved it. And what's so cool about this one is that this book features a lot of different Black artists. So the illustrations constantly are changing in this book, which for me, is kind of a difficult thing to do and keep the story kind of together. Because I've read comics where illustrations change and it changes the dynamics of the story, believe it or not. But this was done in a way where it featured so many different Black artists, and the story still felt like it was one whole story, not several different stories put together. It really worked very, very well. So if you have any little ones that would be interested in reading this one, or getting it for them in the future, it does. Is it February 1st of next year? Yeah, it comes out February 1st of next year. The next picture book that I end up reading was Daddy Speaks Love. This one doesn't come out until January 4th of next year. And this is really just about tributes to the roles that fathers play in children. And let me show you something. What's crazy about this right here is this looks like a real photograph. This is how good E.B. Lewis is with illustrations. This looks like a photograph from a distance. I think up close you can kind of tell, like with the little girl's face, you can kind of tell that it's an illustration. But let me tell you something. Every time I look at this cover from a distance, I think is an actual photograph of a father with his daughter, and it's not. It's a drawing. And it's crazy how talented picture book artists are. Like, that's a crazy amount of talent. So the illustrations alone in this were really good, and it shows so many different variations of what it means to be like a father figure, and what it looks like, and the guidance and confidence that fathers place in their children. I think, and this one it goes beyond Black fathers. Black fathers are definitely, hey Shay, Black fathers are definitely represented in this one, but it's just a diverse group of fathers. And this book itself is actually an ode um, to George Floyd. So the author Leah ended up deciding to write this after, of course, George Floyd's daughter spoke just about how much impact her father had in her life and the impact that he made on the world. So that's where the idea for this one came from, and it's a beautiful picture book. I ended up giving that one 4 out of 5 stars. I then ended up reading, and this is going to, of course, it's going to do that. I meant to right click on that. So I ended up reading an indie romance. This is Seeing Red, which is the first book in the Sapphic fairy tale series. I heard about this because I was watching Tamika from Library of Tomes. She had read, I think it was a vlog, and she had read the third one. She had just finished up the trilogy. And I know that she has been highlighting a lot of sapphic romances on her channel lately. So when she said that she had listened to this one, I think I don't know if she said she had listened to it on Hoopla, or if you could find it. I don't know. But I just went on Hoopla and I looked, and she said it was a quick listen. So I was like, oh, this is something that I can, like, get some stuff done at work and finish it like in the morning part of my day. It's interesting, Shay. I don't think I gave it 3.5. I think I just gave it 3. Yeah, I gave it 3. And it's a quick read. It focuses on 2 characters, Hunter and Kiera. Hunter ends up leaving school, I believe, because her sister it's her husband ends up in prison. He's super manipulative. It's her husband or her boyfriend. I can't remember if they ever were married or not, but they have 2 kids together, 2 sons, and he's super manipulative, ends up in prison. And so Hunter stops what she's doing in order to focus on taking care, or helping her sister take care of her nephews. So she doesn't have, I think she's working as like an assistant in a nursing home, something along those lines. Like, she didn't graduate to get her degree, so she's not really making a lot of money. And then her sister is working at this coffee shop. She overhears Kiera and her mother talking about needing someone to kind of do some like assisted living stuff because Kiera's grandmother either has Alzheimer's or dementia. So it's supposed to be like a Little Red Riding retelling, and like Hunter's sister is like the big bad wolf. And so it's very loose, and you have to pay close attention in order to kind of like pick up on it. And I thought that it was okay. Like, it wasn't anything that was like super like, oh my gosh, like, this is fantastic, because Hunter ends up becoming the caretaker for Kiera's grandmother. And it's not necessarily like I said in my review, it's not necessarily like a forbidden romance, but it is like her she's dating her boss's daughter type of situation, which is cool. But there was something about the end of this that I didn't like, which played a little bit into like socioeconomic status and catering a little bit more to the wealthy, which I did not really like. So it wasn't bad, but it's just the way that it was written. I didn't really enjoy that. So I ended up giving this one 3. Yeah, 3 out of 5 stars is what I um end up maintaining it as. Like, I was just like, yeah, it's about 3 stars. I think to it's interesting because Kiera is supposed to be living in her sorority house, but something happens there. That's why she ends up being her grandmother's caretaker. But she brings Hunter on because of the fact that she can't, because she can't take care of her grandmother full time because of school. But it's all, it was, I mean, it was good enough to where, like, I was like, all right, I'll continue with the series because they're quick reads. It's nothing that serious. I ended up reading another picture book, which this one comes out February 8th of next year. This is With Lots of Love by Jenny Torres Sanchez, which I was happy to see her writing. I was happy to see her writing a picture book because one of the book that she wrote, which We're Not From Here, was one of my favorite books of last year. And I saw that she was writing a picture book, so I got this one for review. And it literally is about a little girl who moves from Central America's United States, and she has to leave everything behind. Literally, that is the premise of the story. But it's cool because it's like a split. I wish I could show you pictures of this one, but I read it digitally. The way that it's written is really cool because the pages are kind of split into 2 panels where you have her talking about her experience in America and how she's feeling. And then on that second half of the page, it's kind of her reminiscing about what her life was like when she was living in Central America. And the artwork is just beautiful, and it really highlights the adjustment that kids have to make, especially when they immigrate from one country to another and they have to leave everything behind. And she really, really misses her abuela. And it's just a beautiful picture book. Like, I'm not surprised that I ended up giving it 5 stars because Jenny Torres Sanchez just is. I don't know if she's written anything else outside of We Are Not From Here in this picture book, but she's just she writes in a way. So she's written a lot more. I need to check that out. She just writes in a way that has such an emotional impact on readers. And I really, really appreciate that. I chew on ice a lot, Shay. It's not good. That's all I do all day at work. Chew on ice, chew on ice, chew on ice. Okay. I read another Black love indie romance in November, and it was Slipped Up in Love by Ashley Nicole. If you did not know, I am a huge fan of Ashley Nicole. Ashley Nicole is one of those writers where she can insert humor into everything that she writes. And I don't mean like a small little chuckle like, ha, ha, ha. This is funny. No, like deep in your gut laughing out loud. And She did it again with this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I actually ended up reading, so this is, I forget the name of this series, and of course I would forget the name of the series. It's a series about a whole family. Let's see if somebody else has mentioned Mason. Okay, so this is about the Mason family, and each book focuses on a different person from the Mason family, and they're all cousins. I think that each book, there may be some brother perspectives in the series, but I know that definitely a lot of them are interconnected because they're cousins. And I read book 6 and 7 last year because they were Thanksgiving themed. And I was like, oh yeah, I want some Thanksgiving Black love romance. And so I ended up reading 2 of hers. That's how I discovered her through kind of like a miniature anthology series that a bunch of Black love romance writers were writing. And then I started exploring some of the stuff that she had written solo. And I found those 2 books, and they had me dying laughing when I read them last year. And I was like, oh, she's the type of author that I can read. And literally everything that I have read from her has just made me die out loud laughing. Like I said, this one was no different. So this is the first book in the Mason family series, and it focuses on 2 characters, Cheyenne and Travis. And Cheyenne and Travis have known each other since they were kids. So Cheyenne is friends with Travis's cousin. Like, she's really close with her. And so she's used to being around the family. Like, she grew up with the family, but Travis used to pick on Cheyenne a lot. And it just got to a point where Cheyenne was like, you know what? I can't deal with this guy anymore. I'm going to avoid him. She basically was traumatized as a kid. Let's just put it that way. She was basically traumatized as a kid, and she didn't want to deal with Travis anymore. Um, so Travis ends up moving back from North Carolina, I believe, because his mother had passed away when he was younger, and then his father was in prison. His father got out of prison. He came and got him, and he moved with him to North Carolina. So he ends up coming back, and Cheyenne just can't get over the fact that they had this really tricky relationship since they were kids. And Travis straight clearly is gunning for her. Like, he's like, I want her, she's gonna be mine, but I gotta play it safe because I don't want to scare her off, type of thing. And it is it is hot, it is good. Travis was chef's kiss. Like, this is a man who went into this relationship like, this woman is gonna be my wife. Like, she may not know it, but I know, I'm going to marry her. One thing that I did like about this, well, 2 things in particular that I really, really liked about this one is that, or about the series, I think that I'm going to enjoy, is that you really feel the love of the family in this series. The love is really, really strong between all of the characters in the Mason family. And another thing that she talked a little bit about is mental health, especially with Black men. I won't say specifically how that conversation comes up because I don't want to spoil it, but it is a huge thing to see um mental health representation in Black men, because it's always been tricky in terms of the Black community. Just Black community and the relationship that it has with mental health is very, very layered. It's very, very complex. I think that relationship is definitely changing and improving day by day, but it's always been very, very unique. And to see this mental health representation in a Black man was great. And the way that Ashley Nicole handled it, I really appreciated it. So if you've never heard of her as a romance writer, she writes all indie. Most of her stuff, not all of it, because I think a couple of books in this series are not available on KU, but she's great. If you like funny, laugh out loud romance, and she can make you laugh at one point and then make you feel really, really serious about something else 10 pages later, which I think is a gift. And I really enjoyed it. I can't wait to pick up the second one. I then read Stuntboy in the meantime by my husband. If y'all did not know, my husband turned 38 this week. So if you haven't wished him a happy birthday, make sure you let me stop. Make sure you wish him a happy belated birthday. But my husband did turn 38. this week. Um, and he just released Stuntboy in the meantime on the 30th of November. This is his newest children's book. And this one is, I think, I listened to this on audio. I got a e-audio arc of this one. And I think the physical copy, because I haven't been able to get my hands on a physical copy just yet. But I think the physical copy is really a mix of like picture book elements, comic type elements, which is great. I've talked about this one a little bit. It's about this young boy by the name of Portico, and he's dealing with issues at school. His parents are pretty much on the verge of a divorce. And so to kind of cope with all those issues that he's facing at school, coping with facing the fact that his parents may or may not be on the verge of getting a divorce, he invents this kind of alter ego called Stuntboy. And it's so that he can, it's so, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming, love. It's so that he can help ordinary people in his life do, he can take away issues that they have so they can be amazing humans. Basically, it's his coping mechanism. And if you have not watched the who show was he on this week, the Stephen Colbert Show, if you did not watch that interview, I highly recommend watching that interview because of the fact that everything that he said about children's literature is how I feel about children's literature and what I try to get across to BookTube about children's literature. He said it in such a beautiful and concise way that I think that I will forever appreciate, because, oh my gosh, it's just an amazing human. But anyway, this book deals with anxiety representation as well. So Portico deals with anxiety, and it's not explicitly said that it is anxiety. It is, I think, what does he call them? Let me see if I can find it in this summary. I forget what he calls it. The frets. That's what he ends up calling it. So he ends up dealing with his anxiety, which he calls the frets. And what I loved about what Jason said in this interview about him having anxiety is that he was trying to normalize the idea of a kid having anxiety, and that anxiety is the equivalent of people who still care, because you care enough about whatever it is you're thinking about to, to worry about it. Like, and I didn't realize until the interview that Jason Reynolds actually had struggled with, or still continues to struggle with, anxiety, and that he had struggled with it his whole life. And this was his way of normalizing it. And I mean, honestly, y'all, Jason Reynolds is one of those authors that knows what audience he's writing for, and he hits it head on, head, what is it? Hits it on the head of the nail every single time. I don't know why I couldn't get that phrase out. But it was excellent. I think I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. Yeah, 4.5 stars. It definitely is one of those things, because I talk about this in adults rating YA and middle grade too harshly. It definitely is all over the place, but it's in the nail on the head. Thank you, Salter. Jeez, man. Tonight is not my shining moment. But if you're reading this as an adult, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to feel all over the place. It's one of those books that is written to really maintain the attention of the children's audience that it's trying to reach. And it does a very good job at that. It's not written for adults. I hope adults don't go into it thinking like, oh yeah, this is a book. It's not for you. It was not written for you. This is written for children. It's meant for children. I really want to look at a physical copy of it because Raul III did the illustrations, and Raul was very, very good at picture book illustrations. So I think I would definitely appreciate that. It's also told kind of like in episodes of a TV show. I think kids would just really just appreciate the way that it's written. I mean, honest, it's Jason Reynolds, y'all. You just, yeah. You may not think it would be something that you would like, but it's Jason Reynolds. I promise you, he writes all good stuff. When you say Salter, you're rocking this, you might feel weird because you're not editing. Yeah, it is weird. It's weird doing a wrap up and I'm not able to kind of edit myself, which makes it great. I definitely there's quite a few. I have a video that's coming out tomorrow that's about 22 new releases. It's like over 60 of them. Some in there, I believe, are Black love and may not be as erotic because they're traditionally published. So if you want Black love that isn't so erotic, I would go with traditionally published, or I would even go to Harlequin. Harlequin, typically you're going to find with their lines, they're more fade to black. They're not explicit sex on page. Bethany say, does your partner know about your husband? Okay, so I have not told my partner that he is explicitly my husband. However, I was sharing pictures of Jason Reynolds on my Instagram all weekend. So clearly, but clearly he knows that I like the man. Yeah. I know it's a fun book, but that's definitely what I would say. He has a story in a erotic anthology that comes out next year in February. But what's crazy about it is that they don't attach any of the writers' names to the stories, so I'll never know which one he wrote. I just want to know if the man can get a little freak nasty, but guess I'll never know that. Okay, here comes the comic book stuff. I'm just going to wrap up all the comics at once, and then I'll dive into some of the nonfiction that I read, because let me tell you, Peril, and then I know I just marked Midnight in Washington at 99% like yesterday or the day before yesterday, but I actually finished that book on November 30th. I just forgot to mark it at 99%. Okay. Infinite Frontier. Are y'all ready for this? Are y'all ready for the comic book explaining that's about to go on? You gotta be. I want to know Jason Reynolds get a little freak nasty. I mean, he looks like he can, but Jason Reynolds is also he's shy. When I met him last year, he told me, he said, because my coworker had to ask him. My coworker asked me, she's like, don't you want to take a picture with him? And I was like, yeah, but I was like, I'm too scared to go ask him. So she was like, my coworker wants to take a picture with you. And so I walked up to him and he was like, why didn't you just ask me to take the picture? I said, because I'm shy. He was like, well, I'm shy too. And no one getting why I was lying. I'm not shy. I was only shy because it was him. And he's very different not very different, but like, I think being around him in person is very different than like when you see him on these interviews. Like, he's a lot taller than what I expected, and he's cool swagger about him, but when he gets in front of his audience, he knows how to turn it on. And when he's not in front of his big audience, I feel like he goes back into his kind of like, quiet reserve. I could be reading the man completely wrong, but that's just how I felt when I met him. That's just my opinion. All right, real quick with the comics. So I reread Infinite Frontier because I always do this where I feel like I get behind on my comics and then I'm rushing to catch up. So I reread Infinite Frontier. This is supposedly like the next phase of DC. So we're kind of past like all the issues that are marked Infinite Frontier at this point. But no, stop, Aaron. I'm sitting here like Y'all are going in like, stop. I'm not gonna know. He has a very distinct way of writing, but I mean, he's writing erotica, so the way that I know him writing kind of like more realistic fiction or like contemporary fiction is probably not going to be the same writing style that he has when writing an erotic story. But I don't know. I think it's unfair that we're not going to know which one he wrote. That'd be an indicator of a lot of things. Okay, so Infinite Frontier, like I said, is supposed to be like this next phase in DC's universe. This takes place after Dark Knight Death Metal, and this is the issue that looks at what happens, like literally after Dark Knight Death Metal. This is what you would see, although it's weird because Future State happens. Okay, let me see if I can explain this. So you have Dark Knight Death Metal, which I have not read, which is where the DC universe is just complete fucking chaos. Okay. Then you get Future State, which is a whole series that they did the earlier part of this year, kind of into the beginning of the summer, where it looks at the possibilities of what the DC universe could look like in the future. And it's weird because Future State publication is before Infinite Frontier, but chronologically, Infinite Frontier comes before Future State. So it's the way that they release it is super confusing. So what ended up happening basically is that Diana, who is Wonder Woman, plays a big role in helping save everybody. So what this comic does, Infinite Frontier, is it looks at everything from Diana's perspective with the gods, and she kind of gets to see how everyone is doing. So we kind of get these inserts of not every DC character, but a lot of the DC characters. So you see like the Teen Titans, you see what would potentially be the next Batman, who's this Black Batman, and his family comes into money. They actually end up owning Bruce Wayne's estate because Bruce Wayne, who's Batman, loses all of his money during the Joker War. So this guy's family, I think his name is Jace. I always forget his name. I think his name is Jace. His family ends up acquiring the estate. They have all this money, and he ends up becoming the next Batman. You see Yara Flor, who ends up becoming another version of Wonder Woman. She's the Brazilian Wonder Woman. And then you end up seeing John, who is Superman's son. One of the main guys, and I'm forgetting his name, of the Green Lantern Corps. There's a big reveal with him. You end up seeing, I don't think Starfire is in this one, because she would have been part of the Teen Titan stuff, and I don't think it was explicitly one. There's another, I forget her name. I can see her outfit and her uniform. I forget her name. You see a little bit of the new Green Lantern Corps. There is new information on Nubia, who a lot of people don't realize that Nubia is Diana's twin sister. She also is by default also another Wonder Woman. So you actually have like 3 Wonder Women. You have Diana, Yara, and Nubia. And this is also kind of an insight to what happens to Gotham City after Joker War. So I can't really tell you much about Joker War because I still haven't read everything that I needed to read to be caught up with Joker War. But there's kind of like a mimicking that happens after Joker War, where Arkham Asylum gets it's this gas that's released that kills people, but it leaves them with a smile on their face. So that gets released in Arkham Asylum, and actually Bane is dead during that. Bane ends up getting killed or dies from inhaling that gas. And you kind of see some things that were a part of Future State end up in this issue where they're trying to get rid of mass vigilantes. You have Scarecrow coming back and making a huge appearance. You have the Magistrate coming into play. So it's super, super complex. I think, one day, someday soon, I would just have to do a live and explain all this stuff because it's kind of hard to understand what I'm talking about without like specific context. But I reread that one because I wanted to start picking up some other stuff, which included Infinite Frontier, issue number 1. So I read issue number 0 because I wanted to be able to prep for this issue. This one was really interesting because there are a lot of new characters in this one. It picks up right where the issue 0 left off. And what was really, really interesting about this one is that the public is now aware of the fact that a multiverse actually exists. So what you see now is that DC had a limitation on the number of worlds that existed in the universe. By going through Dark Knight, Death Metal, into Future State and all of that, what they're saying is by Infinite Frontier, all of these universes can exist. There's an infinite amount of universes that can exist, and I believe sometimes my memory of what happens in what issue bleeds together. But essentially, Wally West meets up with Barry Allen. Barry Allen is the original is the original Flash, and then you have Wally West come in as his backup. Wally West ends up working with a team of superheroes from different Earths. One of the main ones being Calvin, who is Superman. He's the black Superman who's the president from Earth. I can't remember the Earth number, but he is a version of Superman that does exist. I think his name is Calvin Ellis. And he works with a team of a bunch of people trying to kind of keep track and explore the multiverse. And in this one, you find out that people really know like that it does exist. So it's really intriguing because it's a lot of mystery in it. Red Arrow, who's supposed to be dead at this point, is not dead and makes a reappearance. So it's interesting. I then ended up picking up Aquaman. This one just released not too long ago, but I didn't even realize that they were doing an Aquaman Becoming. So I read Future State Aquaman by Brandon Thomas when Future State was going on, and I didn't realize that Brandon Thomas was actually going to start doing a full series based off of Jackson Hyde. So Jackson is originally a part of Teen Titans. He is going to eventually, I think, take over as Aquaman. But in this one, he's you see him kind of adjusting to his training as being Aquaman, and then it's weird because this issue kind of leaves off in like a cliffhanger where somebody's trying to set him up for the okie doke. And I think it's somebody in Atlantis who's trying to set him up, or is attempting to set him up. This definitely does have queer rep in it. Jackson is a queer DC character, which if you didn't know, like now DC is starting to do this thing where if you see like right here, where on the spine of it says like DC Pride, they're starting to give more of their queer characters their own storylines, which I definitely appreciate because it feels less tokenizing instead of just inserting a queer character into a storyline for the sake of it. So I ended up reading Batman Volume 4, The Cowardly Lot, which is basically James Tynion's run on Batman. If you did not know, which I don't know how, James Tynion is like he's my drug when it comes to comics. I love James Tynion. I just feel like there's not much that man can do wrong. He has done, writing for DC. He does a lot of great indie stuff. And I read this trade on Hoopla, but it was crazy because I had read most of the issues already because I had purchased some of the single issues, but I had not been keeping up with the single issues. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to read the trade because it was like 2 issues in the trade that I had not read yet. And this whole entire thing focuses really on the after effects of Joker War. So like I was just telling you, there is a kind of like a bombing that happens at Arkham Asylum. Batman has lost all of his money. He is battling this whole thing called the Magistrate, which is an organization or an idea that has come together to ban all mass vigilantes. Batman being one of them, when they said that Batman can't keep the crime under control. So, what they're basically saying is that villains in Gotham City have gotten so out of control that it's too much for even Batman to handle. So they're like, there's no purpose in you really being here because you cause more damage than help. So that's the reason why we pretty much don't want you here. You see a lot of interesting characters in this one. The one character that I don't like in the series is surprisingly Harley Quinn. And I like Harley Quinn, but what I don't like about Harley Quinn in James Tynion's run is that he introduced a new character during Joker War by the name of Punchline. Punchline was a college student who, like Harley Quinn, becomes super obsessed with Joker and ends up losing her mind. So, Joker is Joker. She calls herself Punchline because she's a punchline to the joke. How original. I feel like Punchline is supposed to be the new Harley Quinn, and Harley Quinn now becomes a super morally gray character in the sense that she's trying to like reform herself and she's trying to play as Batman's sidekick. And it's really strange because she feels very watered down as a character. So that's one aspect of this that I don't like. But the way that this whole entire trade opens up really is that you see Batman battling with Scarecrow. So this whole thing, like Scarecrow is making a reappearance, and no one knows who it possibly could be, what his motives are, and it's it's really interesting. But what I will say, without going into too much, because I'm trying not to spoil it just in case anybody decides that they want to pick it up. The artists on this, I wish I could show y'all. I wish I could show you what Scarecrow looks like, because the way that he's redrawn and this kind of like really it's dark. It's so dark, y'all. The way the Scarecrow looks in this one, he just is. I mean, he literally feels like he has the city in the palm of his hands, and it opens up with him basically torturing Batman. And the Scarecrow is nothing more than a scientist, so he's essentially experimenting on Batman. And oh my gosh, it's good. The artwork just brings it to life. And I don't know. I just really appreciate it. And yes, I do think that Jeff thinks he's Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, I always says he has money, trauma, and a really shitty attitude. And that's Jeff all the way. Like that's I definitely feel that way. I'm definitely excited to pick up. I think this goes to issue 109. No, it goes to 111. So I'm excited to pick up issue 112. I ended up giving that 4 stars. Then I read a whole, which I'm not going to pull each one up, but I read issues 30 and 31 of 29 and 30. 29 and 30 of Catwoman. Catwoman is not a character that Selena, that's Catwoman, is not a character that I've been super interested in ever. I've just never been really interested in her storyline. But her storyline in this ties very closely to Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy's storyline. And what's interesting is that in Harley Quinn's book, this is what makes DC so fucking complicated, is that in Gotham, you have Harley Quinn, Catwoman, Batman, Nightwing. I mean, you have so many characters just housed in Gotham, to be honest with you. Gotham feels like its own little like subset of DC. So it's a whole bunch. Robin in there too. It's a whole bunch of characters in Gotham. And what it feels like is that it's all the same story, but these individual titles are telling the story from their perspective. Because if you pay close enough attention, if you read Harley Quinn's books, she also is trying to find Poison Ivy. And Catwoman in these two issues, which I decided just to read on a whim, I was like, oh, I'll just read Catwoman because these early issues were available on DC Infinite Universe, which I have a subscription to. And I was like, I'm just going to read them. And I didn't realize that Poison Ivy's story was going to be tied into Catwoman's story because um, of some drug that what is the Riddler. The Riddler got hooked on some drug, and Catwoman was trying to figure out what the drug was. And in some of the opening panels, I can't remember if it's issue 29 or 30, you see Poison Ivy kind of hooked up to some stuff and people draining some stuff from her. So I think Riddler was trying to tell Selena, aka Catwoman, that um, she was being used to make this drug, and Riddler had gotten hooked on it. And Selena was trying to get the Riddler to tell her exactly what had gone on. And it's interesting too because Catwoman is a super morally great character as well. And in these specific issues, she's kind of dealing with her separation from Batman. Um, they decided to take like a year break from each other, and she's kind of like, the way that she's thinking and getting involved in some of this stuff is very like of his nature, which I think is interesting. Um, it I was surprised about like how much I enjoyed these Catwoman issues. I thought that they were really, really well done, and I really enjoyed the artwork. And I'm going to be continuing with it because I'm prepping myself for Fear State, which is a kind of like mini event that took place just specifically in Gotham. I also read 2 issues of America Chavez, and I finally finished out. I don't think there's any more issues coming out, and it was disappointing because the series started off strong. I really enjoyed like the first 3 issues of America Chavez. This is a Marvel series, and America Chavez is a part of the West Coast Avengers, and I really liked her origin story kind of, but somebody made a good point in one of the reviews. They feel like this was written this because it's weird. There's a America Chavez volume that was released a couple years back. It was only like 5 or 6 issues of this run. I can't remember who the writer was on it, but they're an author, like a like prose author, and they were brought on to write America Chavez. It got canceled, and then they picked it up again. And some people were saying that they felt like they were trying to rewrite her origin story to prepare for like the next phase of the MCU. Because if I'm right, America Chavez should be making an appearance soon in the MCU movies. And they feel like that's why they rewrote her, or they rewrote the storyline. But she is, like I said, part of the West Coast Avengers. She doesn't really remember anything about her previous situation. She lives with the family, and she's adopted from that family in Doctor Strange. Thank you, Salter. I was like, I'm pretty sure she's about to make an appearance. And some people feel like that's why this was rewritten, because she's about to make her appearance. Um, she doesn't really know where she comes from, where she got her powers from. She's in this, adopted family, and then there's somebody who's starting to come after her. Her powers are starting to go out of whack, and then I'm not going to tell you anything because it will literally spoil this whole entire run. She figures out who's kind of been watching her, where her powers come from, and what happened prior to her living with her adopted family. And I was super disappointed in these 2 issues, in issues 4 and 5. It ruined the entire run for me. It's just a 5-issue run, ironically, and it just didn't do well. Like, I expected so much more. I don't know. I expected so much more from her, and I didn't get it. The artwork was beautiful, and I bought the first 3 issues like as issues. Um And the third issue now is worth some good money because it's the first appearance of a character. So anytime you have the first appearance of a character, like it's the first time that they're showing up on page, those issues end up being worth money. Like the value on them shoots up. So there's a first appearance of a character in the series in the third issue. By the time that I had gotten my third issue when I went to my local comic book shop, the guy who runs the place, he was like, this issue's already selling on eBay for like $25. And I paid $3.99 for it. So comics do have some value now. You just gotta know like what has a possibility of being worth some stuff. All right. 3 other picture books that I read. I'm gonna tear this name up. I think it is Itzel and the Ocelot. I mean, I know that I'm probably tearing that up. This one does not come out. I've been reviewing a lot of stuff like far ahead of time, like super ahead of time, which is it's a good thing and a bad thing. It prepares me for purchasing for the library, but then like I review stuff and it's like, well, I don't know when you'll be able to get your hands on it. However, it's a good read. So that's kind of the situation that I'm running into with this one. This one doesn't come out until June 7th of next year. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm the only review. No, I'm not the only review. Okay. Thank goodness. I'm not the only review. There's 2 other reviews outside of me. This is a picture book that is based on a traditional El Salvadoran tale. And it explicitly talks about the responsibility that humans have to nature. And what I did like about this one is I think it's called Nawat. I'm horrible with pronunciation. It's the language itself is used in here to represent the indigenous peoples that existed in Central America before colonization. And what I liked about this and what the author did with this is that I think that a lot of people forget that Central America is also colonized. Like, I don't know why that kind of feels like an afterthought for some people, but it is colonized as well. So for the author to have included so many like traditional terms and stuff like that, I think it was really interesting. And it's about this little girl who's trying to get access to water for her grandmother and the animals that she meets along the way. I just thought that the tale was really unique because it's based on a different culture and tradition that I'm not familiar with myself. I just thought it was good. It was good. I think that it will do well when it's released summer of next year. I ended up reading Lola Sleeps Over by Anna McQuinn, which Lola books are kind of hit or miss. Like, there's a lot of Lola books. Lola goes to the library. Lola plants a garden. This is just another installment in the series. Lola sleeps over. She goes to her first sleepover. And if I'm not mistaken, it's her cousin's house. Yeah. Lola is just a solid, read. It's one of those series in libraries where like kids just eat up Lola books. This is one of those interesting things where you have representation of a Black child in a picture book, but it's not written by a Black author. People often don't realize that with the Lola series, but it's not written by a Black author. So, it's one of those things where it's gonna like kind of go back and forth about it. But really there was nothing like super stand out about it. And I ended up just giving that one 3 stars. I'm not stunting on y'all. These are just like, it's like, it's just stuff that I'm trying to get a handle on just because Chain Supply is kind of messed up now, so we're not getting books on time. A lot of libraries are not getting books on time because vendors are it's just like I said, the whole Chain Supply is just messed up right now. So trying to prepare to make sure I'm ordering stuff in advance enough that maybe we would be able to get our copies and they not end up on back order. So in order to do that, because a lot of this stuff, so I pull from professional reviews because I can't read everything that's out there. So I heavily rely on professional reviews in order to make selections. And some of this stuff they haven't gotten to it yet. So it's not professionally reviewed. So then I have to read it to see whether it would be a good fit or not. So that's why you'll see me probably in over the course of the next few months reading a, a few 2022 new releases, just to make sure like I'm on top of my game. I also ended up reading Major Life Be Deliciosa. And this is okay. So when I got this book for my library, I did not realize that it was a holiday book, and it is based on the tradition of making um, holiday tamales. And I was very surprised when I read it, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that this was a holiday book." It was so good. It's so good. It's so good because it's about it's about the process of making a tamale, but yeah, The Keeper. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself. Yes, Aaron, I just requested The Keeper by Guadalupe Garcia McCall because I really enjoy their stuff, and I saw that they had a middle grade book coming out next year. And I was like, oh, I have to read this one. Um, anyway, going back to this one, what I did like about this picture book is that it goes beyond just kind of showing the steps that it takes to make a tomato. Like it goes way beyond that. For each step or each process of the picture book, you see that the grandmother actually is making a wish for her family. So it's about storytelling, it's about family, it's about those deep connections and her being kind of like the matriarch of the family. And it brings everything full circle. It was just so beautifully done. The artwork was good. I love picture books that have artwork that's deep and rich in color because it just makes everything stand out. There is, both English and Spanish terms in this book. It was really great reading this one. I think it makes a great holiday book, which you would never know from the cover that it's a holiday book, but it is because they're making tamales on Christmas Eve. Okay, so now it's time for the heavy hitters. I read a lot of books about Trump this year. I've read 3. Yeah, I've read 1, 2. Yeah. I've read 3 this year. Um, 2 of them being over 500 pages, and I don't know what makes me do this stuff. I don't know. I wish I knew. I wish I had answers to why. I just think that yeah, a lot of people, Aaron, have asked me like, bro, like why would you do that to yourself? Um Honestly, it is emotionally draining for me to read these books. And I think I said that in this review too. Yeah, they do. They always have the potential to be super emotionally draining for me, but they're so informative because it goes beyond what the media tells us. Bob is an investigative reporter, so a lot of the stuff that he includes in his books are very, very much like in-depth interviews with sources that he can't always reveal. Um, because of the nature of where the information is coming from. Well, first of all, I didn't even know Peril was coming out this year. I read the other 2 books that Bob had written about Trump, and the first book covered um, the first half of his presidency up until the whole Russian collusion thing, and then the second half delved heavily into um, the whole investigation of the situation that he had with Russia. In Peril covers a lot of that transaction period between um or transition period between Trump and Biden. One thing that's super interesting about Peril is that I think it's going to be Bob's gateway into writing about Biden's Trump presidency. And it's you would have to read it to understand what I'm saying, by like how I think it's going to be a smooth transition into his presidency. So what's scary about this one, and sometimes some of these books blend together, and I have to think about like, why do I feel like I learned so much about the whole thing between like Russian collusion and the quid pro quo, and there was no quid pro quo. That's because I'm going to talk about Adam Schiff's book that I read, which is Midnight in Washington, which was that book was chef's kiss. It's a 5-star read for me. This book really captured what the hell happened during the election. And it was a good segue into Adam Schiff's book, because Adam Schiff's book talks about how democracy has really not been functioning well in the United States. And for this book to really delve into like the reactions of what happened during that election time is super important. One thing that I always say about these nonfiction books that I read about Trump is that it's Trump's behavior is always shocking to me. I mean, I live through it real time, but it's always interesting to go back and realize some of the things that Trump has said is like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, like this is mind blowing. But what is even more shocking are the politicians that enable the behavior. And Adam Schiff really kind of talks about that a lot in his book, the games that politicians play. And all these books are telling me basically is that all politicians, Democratic, Republican, Independent, they're all trash. That's what they're teaching me. But what you see at play in this book with Trump kind of screaming that the election process it wasn't fair is people were more concerned about their political aspirations and maintaining their political aspirations than telling this man that he was wrong and holding him accountable for his behavior. There's a lot of exploration about how Trump, which I always say, I don't always think it's him. Like Lindsey Graham was one of Trump's confidants in biggest advocates, which is so interesting because there's a video of Lindsey Graham getting pissed because Trump gave out his telephone number. Then there's another video of Lindsey Graham being interviewed by Trevor Noah, which I love watching that interview, where he literally calls Trump a bigot, a racist, whatever, etc. And it's interesting to see how he flipped. And how he just became this huge, but it's all about political aspirations. You know, Lindsey Graham has political aspirations to be president. He was running in the Republican primaries and dropped out, but I mean, he has much bigger political aspirations than being a senator. But Trump was planted seeds early on about the fact that there was going to be a there was going to be a lot of voter fraud that was going to happen with this election if he did not win. Which is why you had a lot of Trump supporters saying, like, if he doesn't win, it's fraud. And it was amazing just watching them analyze and talk about how people support it. Or just how people support politicians, not just him. Just how people support politicians so blindly. Because they're authority figures. And just the things that he was doing, like telling people, like, find the votes, which, you know, a lot of media sources covered that pretty well, but just the crazy things that happened with that election behind the scenes, where there are people like, you know, there were some people who did the right thing, who were telling Trump, like, listen, if you want to contest this election, there's nothing wrong with you contesting it, but you need evidence. You can't just make stuff up and be like, oh, we're going to take this to the Supreme Court and we're not going to, allow this, election to happen. And there were some politicians that were telling him, like, it doesn't work like that. But the way that you get to see how it was set up, um, was so interesting. And you really get to see kind of like a full picture of Trump as a human and how hell-bent this man was on winning this election, to the point that, and I still, I don't like Pence. I think Pence is a devil incarnate, and that's just me. I've looked at Pence's voting records, and it's particularly disturbing to me, maybe because I'm more liberal, but I have looked at his voting records, and it is just disturbing to me. I was hoping that Trump would never get assassinated, because that means that Pence would be president, and every social step forward that we have made, I felt like Pence would just flip the shit on its head, and we would go 50 years back. So I thought it was interesting because of the fact that Trump even threw Pence under the bus when it was all said and done. He threw him under the bus because of the fact that, he would not go against what the Electoral College had when they made their decision. Like, he just refused to do it. And it was just interesting to see how quickly he was willing to turn on everyone. It was like watching a child throw a temper tantrum because they can't get the toy that they wanted. So, it's just, I'm going to lash out at everybody because I'm not getting what I want. And I'm going to throw a temper tantrum, and eventually somebody's going to give me what I want. But, it was just like, at some point you just have got to concede and let it go. Just let it go, because you didn't win. You didn't win at all. And I just think that, it was just interesting kind of seeing that stuff from the back end. Of course, this doesn't just end with that. This covers the beginning of Biden's presidency and his COVID response. And I learned a couple of things that I thought was pretty interesting. Like, I didn't realize that Biden and Lindsey Graham were actually rather close at one point. They worked very closely together during Obama's administration, and they fell out after Lindsey Graham had made some comments about Hunter. And at that point, Biden basically was saying, like, kids should be off limits. And Lindsey Graham's excuse was that, well, if the rules were reversed, they would come out full swinging. So at that point, nothing is off limits. It starts to talk a little bit about what Biden did in terms of his response to removing troops out of Afghanistan. I think this is probably, I feel like that's going to be a legacy of Biden's administration that he's never going to get out of. He's going to be known for the mistakes he made with that removal. But what's even more frustrating about this is that people have to realize that I think that any president, regardless of Biden or not, they were damned if they do, they were damned if they didn't. Because Americans have been screaming for years that they wanted the troops pulled out of Afghanistan. That we had no business being there anymore and that they need to be removed. There was a little bit of discussion about how that should have been executed, or how some higher up military officials thought that the way that it was executed was not the way that it should have been. And I think Biden was going to make a decision that was going to be worse than what it was. Trump got that ball rolling though. And it doesn't take any blame away from Biden in what ends up happening, but Trump also got that ball rolling by promising that the troops were going to be out. I feel like he said by like May of this year. I could have my date wrong, but he got that ball rolling, and it doesn't really go into detail. It doesn't go into super detail about what ends up going wrong with that. But I think that when Bob puts out, because he's done a biography or he's done commentary on every president's administration, except for Nixon, because that's how he kind of broke out on the scene. The Watergate scandal was Bob Woodward broke. I forget the other guy's name, but he broke that story. So he didn't do, of course, a sit down with Nixon, because he wrote that that All the President's Men is about Watergate, and then he does a kind of biography, a commentary, political commentary on everyone's administration after that. So I know that Biden's is coming, um, but I think that a lot of what it's going to be discussing is how he handled that removal of troops from Afghanistan. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it, y'all. Um, yeah, it's like I said, I think it's one of those things where no matter who did it, whether it was going to be Biden, Trump, Obama, or whoever, we should have never been there. That's Bush's administration. That's how we got there. Um, Bush Jr., by the way. um, it's how we got there, but it was no matter what they did, it was tricky, because when you removed our troops financially, there was just no way that Afghanistan was going to be able to defend itself against like Al Qaeda. Like it just they weren't going to they weren't going to be able to do that. The only way that was that Al Qaeda was really staying away was American influence, and once you pull us out, the money stops too. So you don't have that financial support. You can't maintain a military. So it's like Americans wanted troops home, but then Americans didn't want the people of that country just abandoned the way they were kind of like abandoned. So it really it's tricky. But I think that there were some military kind of like strategies that were supposed to be implemented that weren't implemented the right way, and you end up in a situation where you have lives that were lost. Um, and it's sad and it's super unfortunate. You have lives that were lost on the American front, and then you have a whole country that's in disarray. Um, and it's heartbreaking that is, that is the life that people in the global community have to live because of decisions that a first world country has made, a Western country has. It's just it's so it's not black and white. It really isn't. None of that stuff about Afghanistan is black and white. There's one that a book that the Washington Post just wrote. I forget the guy's name but he writes for the Washington Post. The book itself, I think, is called The Afghanistan Papers. I do want to read that one because it details how all this shit even happened. And I just feel like there's so much more to it than what the average American citizen does know. But I did like Pero. Like I said, I think it's a good setup for what he's going to be doing about Biden's administration. I think this was really interesting because neither Biden nor Trump consented to being interviewed for this book, which Trump was interviewed for this, because this is called the is it the is it Woodward trilogy, Trump trilogy? I think it was Trump trilogy, whatever. In the second book, which covers the second half of his presidency, Trump agreed to be interviewed. So I like that one more than the first one because you literally get to see how this man thinks. And it's very much so like a constant seek for like validation, um, and not really having a good harness on his emotions at all. Very childlike in nature, which is why I think a lot of people think that he has some personality issues going on there because of how he just acts to certain things. Like, there were times when people would tell Trump to do certain things, and then he would literally go out in front of press and do something completely different, and they would be like, what the fuck is going on right now? um I just, there's a lot of pieces and parts to him as a human, and I'm so interested in someone doing like a full-blown character study on the man. Okay, so I do have some things that are like still and currently reading, which a book that I did end up finishing in November that I had not reviewed. It was a couple books, y'all, that I think I had written reviews for that I finished in November. Yeah, I also finished Imaginary Borders in November as a nonfiction audio. This is part of the Penguin Pocket collections, which are just really, really short stories, nonfiction. This one specifically looked at the climate crisis, and how it goes beyond, like, it extends beyond borders, and how it impacts socially and economically, how it impacts communities, which I thought is really, really interesting. Um, it was only like a 40-minute audiobook. It's probably one that I would listen to again. Um, I did end up reading. This is my problem because I don't write my reviews when I should write my reviews. I also ended up reading No Thank You, a Fiennes family novelette. It's a trilogy that's one is written by different Black love romance writers. Alexandra Warren wrote this first one, which is a friends to lovers romance. It's not really forbidden romance, although the main character in that one had ended up, she was friends with benefits with the hero, and she didn't want to take it a step farther because she had been dating his uncle. So she had been dating his uncle before she started sleeping with him, and she was like, I can't do this because I had a thing with your uncle. And I would just refuse to kind of cross that line. So he was asking if he could take her home to Thanksgiving, and she was like, no, you can't, because I came a few years ago to Thanksgiving dinner with your family, with your uncle. So that's just pretty, weird and fucked up. And basically he's like, no, like, nobody's going to care. That was years ago. And she's like, no, it is a problem. Like, we need to be friends with benefits. But he definitely is determined to be more to her than, her friends with benefits. But yeah, having the uncle thrown in there is pretty freaking hilarious. I also read The Last Witch, which is more like a YA graphic novel. It feels like it's based on like Celtic myth a little bit. um this girl lives in this town, this small, don't even say town, small community, and her father keeps telling her like not to go in certain parts of the woods because there's a witch that lives in there, and she's like, no. And she finds out that her father was telling her the truth. There really is a witch that lives in there, but she comes to find out that she also may have witch-like abilities. This one was actually really good. The artwork was really good. Um I'd seen it a couple times on Hoopla, and I was like, "Oh, I really want to check it out." And then my library got a physical copy of it, so I went ahead and checked that one out. And I think I may have. I'm trying to see if I have a copy of it somewhere over here. I don't think I do. I probably do, but then I just don't know where I put it. Which, the story of my life. I have so many books just sitting here on the floor. I just don't know where I put all my stuff at. Anyway, the artwork in it is really, really nice. I really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, last book, and I'll show you guys a couple of things that I'm currently reading, and then we will finish for the night. So the last nonfiction book that I ended up reading in the month of November was Midnight in Washington: How We Almost Lost Our Democracy and Still Could. This was a pretty hefty one. This one, I believe, is also over 500 pages. I know I said that earlier. Yeah, this one is over 500 pages as well. And this is specifically from Adam Schiff's perspective. If you didn't know, Adam Schiff is the one who led the trial for the impeachment of Trump. And what I liked about this is that it's part um, political commentary, but it's also part biographical. So you learn a lot about Adam Schiff and his political career, which I actually think is like really, really interesting. And this book actually made me laugh out loud. It wasn't, I wasn't supposed to be laughing, but I thought it was hilarious. Like there were moments where he talks about how like Trump used to call him like pencil neck Schiff, shifty Schiff, and he used to say like Adam Schiff looks like he has a pencil for a neck and a watermelon for a head. Like Trump is childish. Trump is so fucking childish. He's the most fucking childish president we've ever had. Because Adam would talk about how like he would go on Twitter and would talk shit and he'd call shifty Schiff. He's a crook. Like who who has, first of all, who has the time? Second of all, I don't know where this man came up with his shift. Like it's crazy. Like to talk about the fact that this, but he wasn't lying. No, that's the thing that's funny. Um, Adam Schiff's neck does look like a pencil, like, and it's fucked up, but it's like it's funny, and like I feel like you kind of get that same energy from Adam Schiff, and he does end up, yeah, like TA said, he is reading the audiobook, and he does a great job narrating it. There's just a certain level of like passion that he has in it, and you learn some really dirty shit about politics reading this book. There was one that stood out to me where he was talking to, I can't remember if it was a Republican representative or a senator, and I can't even remember their name, which is why I want physical copies of this stuff, because it's kind of a different experience listening to it on audiobook, because of the fact that you're not seeing the names, you're just hearing them. And sometimes for me, for nonfiction, it's a little bit easier if I do see it. So I may end up getting a copy of this one. And I also do want the entire Trump trilogy. I've just been more interested in nonfiction related to politics lately. Who knows? Okay. If I didn't have a child right now, I would definitely be a little bit more hands-on in like some grassroots efforts, but single mommies type of things makes it a little bit more complicated. But it was funny, or it was interesting really listening to him kind of, and it wasn't funny. It was funny in a heartbreaking way, because literally him and this other politician were sitting on a plane, and Adam Schiff literally kind of told him one thing, and this man went and misconstrued what he said to the media. And when they were in the chamber and Adam confronted him, he was like, yo, like, what's up with that? Like, why would you tell the media that? That's just a straight lie. And the politician looked at him and said, I mean, man, you know how it is. Huh? Like, this is just how, to think that this is how politicians were thinking. And Adam does a great job pointing out why a lot of this stuff is problematic. It's problematic because self-interest has become the primary motivator for politicians. Not saying that politicians haven't always had an interest in self, because it is their job. You know what I'm saying? That's how they make their money. That's their bread and butter. So, you don't get reelected, you're out of a job, technically. Which is dumb as fuck, because it could just all go back and practice law, because all of them have their JD, or most of them have their JD, which is dumb. So kind of seeing that, and like the fact that it now has become an issue where maintaining a seat is more important than telling the truth. And you see that when he's writing, because Nancy Pelosi ends up, determined he's going to lead the case on the first impeachment trials. And it sucks because the evidence, y'all, the evidence that Adam Schiff talks about, and it's crazy. So at first, they didn't really think that they had anything to run with the Russia collusion thing, okay? So the Russian collusion thing, they were saying that Russia influenced the 2016 election by basically doing character assassination to Hillary Clinton, and that they were able to effectively sway people into looking at Clinton a different way. And they really weren't able to get a lot of traction with that until the whistleblower came forward. And that's when the whole thing between Trump and the Ukrainian, is he a prime minister or I can't remember they use prime minister or president. But basically that whole meeting, when the whistleblower came forward, what I think is so unique about Adam Schiff is that he never knew who the whistleblower was. He never asked. To this day, Adam Schiff still has no idea who the whistleblower was, because he knew that with him leading the case, with writing this book, that all eyes would be on him, and he did not want to potentially give away any identifying information that people could put together to figure out who the whistleblower was. I said, damn, I wouldn't even think about that, because you literally have somebody, it's their job to protect this person. And the whistleblower, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, but the whistleblower came from within the FBI. And that's some serious shit. Like, they have to be protected at all costs. So the fact that this man literally is engaging in, if you do this, I will do this. And it didn't have to come out that way, but it was crazy that Adam Schiff had all of the, evidence down to, it was just clear as day. It was clear as fucking day that this man had engaged in quid pro quo. There was nothing that was gray about the fact that it was, if you do this for me, I am going to do this. If you don't, or basically, I need you to look into stuff about Biden. When Biden became a forerunner for the Democrats, it was like, I need you to find out stuff about Joe Biden, or else I'm going to withhold military aid to you. It was clear as day. It was clear as it was right there. Like, and Adam Schiff had so much evidence, so he was able to get him impeached. But he said it was so divided on party lines, because people were more interested in maintaining their seats and telling the truth. They were doing character assassinations of, ambassadors, of a man that has served in the military, and people got blackballed for that shit. I didn't even realize how many people got blackballed from telling the truth. There was a guy whose father was an immigrant. He brought him to the United States. The guy ends up joining the military, and he said, it's an honor to serve this country, and coming from an immigrant family, basically he was getting on the stand saying, this is what happened. This is exactly what happened. He never was going to be able to gain, he was supposed to get a promotion in the military, but because he went up there and he testified, he never got the military promotion, and he realized that he was never going to make it higher in the ranks in the military because of that. And it's crazy that people literally were willing to avoid the truth. When I talk about like the means in which these the people who were working on the case, the means by which they were able to really, really just pile on the evidence. It's like, how the hell could you not think that that was quid pro quo? Like, how could you not see that? But he knew by the time when he took it to the Senate, there was no way in hell. There was no way in hell that he was going to get a conviction and removal. And his point was that if you don't remove this man, he's going to, what you're telling him is like you're telling a child, you're reinforcing that this behavior is okay, that you can get away from this behavior and it doesn't matter. And it's true. And the way that the Republic, I feel like, you know, because I don't necessarily consider myself a Democrat. I don't subscribe to the two-party system. I think that's a bunch of bullshit too. I really do. The two-party system is bullshit, and they never let any other party really make any headway because they don't want any other party to make a headway. They just want it to be between Democrats and Republicans. What's so screwed up is that Trump has voters wrapped around his finger. So then your senators and your representatives are very much so tied. They feel like they're tied to their constituents. So they know that in order to maintain their position, they have to lie. They have to say that they don't believe that this man did anything wrong because they need to maintain their position of authority. You're willing to let someone essentially destroy the building blocks of your political system just so you can maintain money in your pocket. You know, money is the root of all evil. And it's crazy. It's crazy. But when I say that Adam Schiff's book was Chef's Kiss, like I can't wait to reread that book type of Chef's Kiss. I mean, it was so good because he starts the book off talking about the insurrection. And then he brings it all full circle and ends the book talking about the insurrection. How, because they never removed this man the first time he did that, he was abusing his office, his power in office. He was taking advantage of that. Because they never removed him, they said this man is going to do it again. He's going to do it again because you're teaching him that the behavior is okay. And sure enough, this man literally told people to disrupt them certifying the votes. That's wild to me. That's so crazy. This man had so much influence and power. And it's like you have people in our political system that are willing to turn a blind eye to the nonsense that this man engaged in to maintain money in their pockets, not doing shit for their constituents except wanting to remain in office so they can keep money in their pockets and maintain their lifestyle. Money is the root of all of this. And you know, I don't know, it was just, I think that Adam Schiff's book probably was a little tougher to, it was so good, but it was, I think, a little bit more difficult to process because you know that politicians are crooked. You know they're crooked. You know, no politician is perfect. But when you see the I mean the absurd crookedness, because he goes through, like, I think a lot of people knew what was going on, but no, you know, people weren't actively, not everyone was sitting down actively watching like this trial go on. But when you like hear like the evidence, the trial, the cross-examinations that happened during the trial, it makes you tilt your head sideways like, what did y'all not see about this? And what about this did not make sense to you? 1 + 1 = 2. Why are you thinking that it equals 3? What are you not getting about the fact that 1 and 1 is 2 and not 3? It literally had me so pissed off because it was like they had all this fucking evidence. They had all this evidence. And I will never forgive Mitch McConnell. It's a lot of things that I'll never forgive Mitch McConnell for. I'm about to say with his turtle looking ass, but I don't talk about other people children like that. But he looked like a damn turtle. Mitch McConnell delayed the second impeachment on purpose. He They refuse to hear evidence. And it's kind of like, huh? How did you refuse to hear evidence when half of y'all SOBs were there when the insurrection happened? It was just, I was like, this is so crazy that, like, literally, y'all were there. Y'all were there. People died. And I did not even realize there were a couple people who committed suicide after the insurrection. And y'all are telling me that you don't want to hear evidence, and Mitch McConnell delayed it until he delayed it because they didn't want to deal with it. And all they were trying to do was that they were trying to make sure that this man couldn't run for office again. And what honestly the Republicans are doing right now is going to come back and it's going to bite them in the ass eventually. 2024 is going to be a tough year because if people don't think that Trump is running for president again, you're out of your fucking mind. He's doing everything right now, and it's like there's so many different things that are kind of at the forefront that's kind of like a distraction. But that man is going to run again in 2024. And these people are going to come back with a fucking vengeance. It is going to be another close race. I'm determined that it's going to be another close race because people are pissed that Biden is in office. And people are pissed about the way that things were handled in regard to that. And they're going to come out tenfold. And Adam Schiff talks a lot about voter restrictions that are now being put into place to prevent certain groups from being able to vote. And restrictions are getting tougher all the time. People trying to pass legislation, making taking away some people's voting rights. And that's all in preparation. This is all preparing for 2024, or shall I say 2023, because that's when it's all going to start. 2023, end of 2022 going into 2023, it's going to start to be an explosive couple of years. It really is going to be super explosive because I just don't. This is me speaking personally, and then I'm going to move on. Oh yeah. He's going to run. There's no way that he's not going to run. Yeah, if there's no fucking way that he's not running in 2024. But the Republican Party set it up to where he could run again. And Lindsey Graham has said that he would support him if he made the decision to run again in 2024. I don't think, and this is me speaking personally, I don't think that Biden is going to get a second term. I don't see it happening. I don't know if he will run for a second term. I just think that Biden is, he's getting older. He's had his lengthy career. And I think that his last goal, before maybe he takes a step back from politics, was to become president because this was his third time running. And I think that that's what he wanted more than anything, was he finally got that top position that he'd been gunning for so long. But I just don't see, I'd be surprised if he runs for a second term. I'd be super surprised if he does. But it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. I don't know if they will automatically make him the nominee because there's going to, some Republicans are going to possibly want to run against him, but Trump made a lot of extreme, like far right. This is not the Republican Party of Senator McCain, of George Bush, to be honest with you. And I was not a fan of Bush when he was president, and I was young when he was elected. I wasn't a fan of Bush, but the Republican Party, as it was with the Bush family, with McCain, with what's the guy's name? Oh man, I can't remember his name, and I see his face so clearly. This is not the old school conservative Republican Party that we're used to seeing. You know, I don't have a problem with conservatives. It's just I'm just not a conservative. My values are not conservative at all. It's just not me. Especially when we're talking about like um social things. I'm not conservative. I've never been conservative in that sense. You know, I think that what we saw back then, although I didn't agree with a lot of things that they did, I think that those Republicans were able to work across the aisle. Um, I think that they, at some points, could work together to get things done. They could work together uh, um, to make differences for the people. Like Bethany said, this is like far right, off alt right, um, white nationalist, really conspiracy heavy believing Republicans. It's delusion, to be honest. I feel like a lot of them are very delusional. What's the lady's name from what's her name from Georgia? I think her last name is Green. Is it Green? She's fucking crazy. And I don't say that lightly. This woman's off her fucking rocker. Like she's off the chain. She's wild. Like I have never seen a politician like what? Like, bro, are you qualified to have this position? Like that's how crazy. Yes, yes. She's crazy, man. She's oh god. You know, there's like politicians that really like make my skin crawl. Ted Cruz, Green. It's a handful of them. I'm like, y'all are just, oh my gosh. It's crazy. And then you have governors now who are off the fucking chain. My governor has lost his scruples. He literally has taken the marbles out his head and throw them and said, fall where you may. Literally, he's lost his marbles. Texas governor is just off the chain right now. I don't know what like it's just you got people who are in positions of power right now that have no business being in positions of power. And I also think that you have you have politicians who are making people who are far right, white nationalists, alt right, they're being made to feel comfortable. And that is the problem. And then you have politicians who are not educated on certain topics, spewing bullshit to constituents who are then perpetuating these lies. It's a guy in a small town, in a rural town in Virginia, running for office, talking about critical race theory, and had no fucking idea what he was talking about. None. Couldn't even really accurately describe what critical race theory was. And yet he's sitting here perpetuating these lies because, you know, he is thinking, oh yeah, critical race theory, like we're not supposed to like that. But you don't even know what the fuck it is. So why are you making a comment on it? It's stuff like that where it's like you're speaking on things that you just don't know anything about. And, you know, media doesn't help. You have people like Candace Owens who literally can jump off a cliff and it would make not a damn difference in the world. She does things for media attention. You have what is Tucker Carlson, a fucking fool. You have people like Tommy Lauren, even crazier. It just it's just, you know, it's a mess. It's a mess. And I'm sorry that I went under that long. I knew that that was probably going to be the longest part of this wrap up because of the fact that it's a lot of it's a lot of yeah, it's a lot of stuff. And you're right, Aaron. It's more and more black men rocking with Republicans, and it's so disrespectful. Like to a black woman, that shit is so disrespectful because most black men, first of all, black men do not vote at the levels at which black women do. and Black men do not engage in grassroots efforts the way that Black women do. And it's so fucking disrespectful. But you know why they are clinging to it? Because I think that Republicans now, not old school, but Republicans now subscribe to toxic masculinity. And I think that culturally, Black men are raised in toxic masculinity in very heavily gendered roles. So it I hate to use this term, but it's the macho man type of vibe. And that's what they're giving off. That's what Black men have been raised in. That's what they continue to perpetuate to, young Black boys and young Black men. And so because that toxic masculinity is being validated by this political party, you often have now more Black men willing to vote for this party. Um, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting and I hate it. And that's something that the Black community, I think, has such a problem with. That reinforcing of toxic masculinity and passing on that trauma to generation after generation and not realizing that it's doing more harm than good. I got into a debate at work with a couple of Black men, and I told them, I said, just tell me right now. We can agree to disagree because if you have an opinion, you have an opinion. I can't change that. But tell me right now, you subscribe to gendered roles, right? Well, if you're telling me that you believe this and that a boy should be raised to do this and he's not supposed to do this, you believe in very gendered roles and you reinforce toxic masculinity. If that's what you are, then that's what you are. I mean, I'm not here to judge you for it, but just say that you do, because that's what that is. And you continue to pass this cycle on over and over and over and over and over and over and over. You give in to gendered roles. And they try to say, oh no, this is generational, like your generation is super different than mine. And it's like, yeah, we probably, we learn different things, because I did grow up in a generation that is, I think, a little bit more open than the generations that they grew up in. However, just because you're taught something doesn't mean that you have to continue to believe it. You can change it if you want to. And that's why I always, like, there's a fallacy in your argument when you say that. When you're like, oh, well, I was brought up in a different generation. Okay, there were behaviors and things that I was taught as well that I was willing to unlearn because I just didn't believe that it was right. But you want to continue to stay in that because you believe it's right, not because this is what you were taught to do in a generation. Is what you want to continue to believe in and teach others. So, I definitely am not shocked. Um, I'm definitely not shocked to see a lot of Black men who vote for Republicans. I'm not ever shocked either by the percentage of the Latinx community that's voting for Trump that's going up, because people often forget how much religion plays a role into stuff like that. There are certain groups within the Latinx community that, are Catholic, and Catholicism is very traditional. So they're going to go with more traditional conservative candidates. And it just, it's a lot more nuance to that than thinking that everybody that's from marginalized communities is automatically going to vote Democratic. I don't know why people seem to think that, but it's not true. It's not true at all. All right. That's what I'm saying, Aaron. That's the shit that pissed me off. That conversation is like, oh well, I was raised in, I'm a generation before you, which means it would be Gen X because I'm a millennial, and I'm like, okay, but like my dad is a baby boomer, and my dad doesn't even. You want to talk about race traditional? He's a baby boomer that was raised in Georgia. Was raised in Georgia, in the country part of Georgia. It don't get more conservative, more toxic masculinity, gender roles than that. And my dad, in his age, does not continue to subscribe to toxic masculinity and gender roles because he feels like it's just not right. You can unlearn stuff if you're open to unlearning it. And using the generation that you were born into as a crutch to explain why you continue to believe in toxic masculinity and teach your sons toxic masculinity. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's so disgusting. Oh, your generation is more wide open and da 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 da. And I'm like, just shut the fuck up. Like, just don't talk to me. I can't stand talking to people who are uneducated, talking about like trying to make social commentary and talk about politics. I just be looking like, do you even know what you're talking about? People try to debate me on stuff, and I'd be like, you're engaging in misogynoir right now. What is that? Why the fuck are you talking to me if you don't even know what that means? Why are we having this conversation? We don't need to talk to each other anymore. Like, oh gosh. I can't. I just cannot. I can't. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. Sorry, I accidentally muted myself. All right. We could sit here and we could talk about this all night, but it is almost 11:30 here. So just the last things that I want to show y'all. Some things that I've recently finished and currently read. Great conversation, by the way. I literally could talk to y'all about this stuff all night long if I did not have to get up early and go to work. I just recently finished You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen McManus. I told y'all about that. I just finished that last week. Karen McManus has she hasn't been hitting as hard for me lately. That was probably like a 3.5 star read. I got to sit on that one for a little while. I'm still reading You Truly Assume by Layla Sabrine. This one comes out February of next year. And it is about 3 Black Muslim girls who are all impacted by a terrorist attack that takes place in DC. I'm reading a graphic novel called The Woman in the Woods and Other North American Stories. This is it. I can't remember what each story is about because I feel like I've only read one. I'm trying to remember how many I've read, but they're all by Native American Indigenous authors, and it's a graphic novel. So yes, that one. I finished The Fastest Way to Fall by Denise Williams. That one's probably like a 4-star read for me. I just finished that one, I think, this week. It was really good. The one thing about Denise Williams is that she writes really good contemporary romances that always have kind of like hard-hitting topics. This one is primarily focused on like body image, talks a lot about fat phobia, and it is hard to read in some parts, but I think she did it very, very well. I also finished Dead Voices by Catherine Arden, which is the second book in the Small Spaces series, which was really good. It was creepy. Oh my gosh, that book was creepy. Not like scary, but for a middle grade book, yeah, that was a little on the creepy side. And then between last night and today, I finished The Everything I Have Lost. This book was originally written in Spanish and then it was translated. I don't know what to say about that one. That book is dark. Like no filter on anything, and it's a middle grade book, but I almost want to say like it's more YA than middle grade because that book just really it was dark. It was super, super dark. It's a girl who's growing up in I forget the name of the town, but she lives in Mexico, and it basically details how the town that she lives in is super dangerous. Like you don't go outside because you could get hit by a stray bullet. It was interesting watching her grow up, but the things that child went through, my God, like I read hard-hitting contemporary books, but y'all, I don't know how I'm gonna rate that. I don't even know how I'm gonna write a review for that book because I just have never I haven't read anything like that. I'm glad that the author decided to get it translated, but Jesus, that was a tough one to read. I'm not actively listening to these two, A Snake Falls to Earth or Walking in Two Worlds, both by Native American Indigenous authors. I started reading them in November, but I started listening to that political heavy stuff, and I was like, ugh. That's why I started picking up the picture books and the comics, because I was like, this I needed stuff in between. I also wanted to show y'all some stuff that I probably will be working on. I haven't marked as reading yet, like it's currently reading. I don't know if this is gonna pull up. It's gonna act stupid. Um, let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so I use Advice as a review space for me. So some of the stuff that I'm going to be picking up probably within the next couple weeks. Not all of this stuff, but some stuff that I needed to kind of work through for 2022 stuff. I probably, and it all depends upon like when this stuff comes out, when it's released. I'm trying to like, why is this doing that? This is okay. It's all over the place. Anyway, so a couple ones that I probably will be working on: Powwow Day, which is a picture book, No Filter and Other Lies by Crystal Maldonado. She wrote Fat Chance Charlie Vega, which I read that one this year and really, really enjoyed it. Trying to see. And then Love Boat Reunion. I'm currently listening to Love Boat Taipei so that I can read Love Boat Reunion, which comes out in January. And then a couple other picture books. A History of Me and Evicted are two picture books that I'm trying to read. And then I also low-key do need to make it through Pizza My Heart and also A Girl in the Lake. So I have quite a few things like this too, Delphine Denise and the Mardi Gras Prize. I have quite a few things that I need to make it through in terms of, I think all this stuff already released. Yeah, all that stuff really released. Stuff that I need to make it through because of the fact that it's releasing pretty soon. And I haven't reviewed some of this stuff yet. Oh, like this. Like these. Out There, Into the Queer New Yonder, All Signs Point to Yes. Those are two. But I'm not going to worry about those anthologies just yet because they don't come out until like the summer of next year. So I'm not as pressed about those. But I did want to finish You Truly Assumed as well as The Kindred, because those come out pretty soon. But yeah, that's most of the stuff that I'm currently reading. And that's pretty much my wrap up. I left out two picture books I just saw when I went on Advice. I was like, oh, those are two picture books that I haven't finished. I probably will end up reviewing them. But I appreciate y'all being here. We were almost on here for 3 hours. But now I need to go prep and get ready for bed because I have to get up early in the morning. So yes, I hope y'all enjoyed. You see my camera in the background. But thanks for coming. I don't know if I would ever do this as a live again. I just will record and edit. But I appreciate you guys listening to me ranting and raving and all the books that I read. I made it through. Thanks, Alter. Thanks, y'all, for coming. I hope everyone has a good night.